Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, when you're really passionate about something that you love and you want to promote it and share it with the world, it's not just about doing what everyone else does. It's about finding that better way to do it and that more compelling way to sort of get your message out there. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion. And frankly, if you like how we do things around here, I'm assuming you do, because you're listening right now, you can subscribe to the podcast. You can find us basically wherever you get your podcasts. We're at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, pretty much everywhere. Give us the old subscribe and the 5-star rating and like us and subscribe. But also we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're on Instagram at either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, I say it a lot, but it's true. Please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, your one-stop shop, your home for basically coverage of the moving image at large. It's film, it's television, it's festivals. If we love watching it and writing about it and talking about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. On this episode, we got one that's near and dear to my heart. We're talking a little bit about the Canadian Film Festival, which is running right now on the Super Channel for those of us in Canada, and it's they went to the virtual space again for another year. It's a nonprofit organization that is supported and dedicated to supporting Canadian independent film. It is presented by the Super Channel, like I said, and it's been running from March 22nd, and it's going to run until April 2nd. And it is really put out a swath of not just interesting industry content for anyone who wants to learn, who is in the know, but also a wide array of incredible films. If you have Super Channel, if you don't, please watch some really fantastic Canadian films that are pushing boundaries and really sort of making a statement for what it means to be a Canadian film. And I mean, I've had a soft spot for this festival for quite some time, and they had to pivot into the virtual space digitally because obviously when the pandemic hit and everything shut down, a lot of stuff changed. But, I mean, obviously things are still going on, but they stayed there, not just out of an abundance of safety, but also just acknowledging the realities and advantages that sort of the shift to the virtual space and the shift to where they are now with the Super Channel has created a lot of advantages for not just the festival, but for Canadian filmmakers as well. And we had the unique pleasure of sitting down once again with Mr. Bern Euler, who is the founder and executive director, and also the festival director of the festival, Miss Ashleigh Reins, to talk about sort of the festival in general, why it stayed with Super Channel, the nature behind programming and how important it is to sort of really try to create something that is diverse and representative across so many boards, which I really think they did with this festival, and so very much more. It's a real interesting talk just in terms of, I guess, the nature of not just the Canadian film business, but also how important programming is, and really understanding the need to put out such some dynamic programming out there. I'm saying programming a lot, but it's true. It's such a vital thing to be able to have a platform to put out and show different stuff, especially in this day and age where we are bombarded with content. And I think what Ashleigh's done as festival director and Bern has done as well, just as the founder and executive director, is really some amazing stuff. And if you love Canadian cinema, please support these people. They are playing right now until April 2nd on the Super Channel. But first, enjoy our talk with Bern and Ashleigh, because between you and me, it's a real good one.
Now, I feel like you've been doing this as long as I've been doing this, if not longer.
You know what? It's pretty. We're pretty close. We're neck and neck,
right?
This is for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that kicks off on my first question, because I mean, Bern, you and I have obviously talked before, but I've noticed now. I mean, obviously, when the pandemic hit, everyone had to sort of pivot and change and sort of shift to a different space. Some places are going back to theaters, but you guys seemingly aren't. I'm kind of curious, what is it about sort of the Super Channel space and sort of switching to a different platform that is seemingly kind of reinvigorated the idea of the Canadian Film Festival?
Well, I think that's actually, if I'm going to jump on this one first, if that's cool. Because I think there are two answers here. One, we're virtual this year just because the pandemic is still raging.
Well, exactly.
If anybody got sick, David, I would I'd feel so bad. It's just not worth it. There are people on our team that have to be protected, let alone our parents and all that, and our audiences. And right, we just had a dinner last week for an actual in real life dinner, and somebody just told us that they tested positive for COVID. They just told us an hour ago.
Oh no!
Okay. Yeah, I just tested fine, and so did my wife and Ashley too. So we're okay, but it's still going on. So we wanted to do a hybrid, and that is what we had planned on. And we were planning on it up until 2 months ago, right, Ash? Was it 2 months ago when we were like?
No, yeah, I think it was
February.
It was in lockdown, when we were in whatever version of lockdown we were in again, and we were looking at the projections for Omicron, and we don't have a huge operating budget. We can't pivot like Sundance 500 times until you get to the final destination. We had to say either we're in or we're out, and without being able to see what the future was, we knew we had this relationship with Super Channel. So going back into a completely virtual space, we knew we could deliver the festival and also deliver it safely.
Yeah. So we in the middle of Omicron, like Ashley said, we just decided, okay, let's just do this one more time. We don't want to be just virtual.
Right.
Our best case scenario is hybrid. Because the one thing, and now here into the second part, I think, of the answer what you asked, is that being with Super Channel has completely made us rethink the way we have to do things, or the way we can do things, I should say. Because when we had to cancel 2 years ago, in 2020, it was I pulled the plug with a week and a half until the festival, and everything was ready to go. Everything was just ready to go. And we were like, everything. I woke up in the morning thinking, oh yeah, Ashley and I, we bought more hand sanitizer. We're going to do a funny handshake with our elbows. We're fine. By the end of the day, I'm reading the news. I was like, oh, this is getting real. Everybody's going to start canceling. Ours is next week. I don't think the city will be open next week. So I decided to pull it. Within 2 days, the city started shutting down, and everybody else did. And then we were actually the first festival in the world to do that pivot into virtual land, which was cool because we could reimagine things and okay, I always imagined this festival should be coast to coast.
Right.
And now, and then at that time, then I was thinking, it's not coast to coast or even in the city, it's bankruptcy because all the money's been spent. I can't give people their money back. But then I started talking to Super Channel, and they were right on board. And it was like a saving grace in that we could keep it going, not declare bankruptcy, but also then we've got that coast to coast audience. I just imagined, I have a really great team, and I just imagined, this is how I imagine it looking like. If you guys tell me if you guys agree, but let's just make it happen. And then we just work backwards. And we were lucky because one person on our team is a gamer who knows how to broadcast video out to multiple platforms. So So I mean, there was still a learning curve, but he figured that out. Ashleigh and I just rallied the troops and did rehearsal upon rehearsal upon rehearsal with the filmmakers. Hey, Ash, remember that one day we did rehearsal with 100 filmmakers?
Yeah. Well, nobody knew how to use Zoom at the time, and that became like, now everyone, it's easy, but at the time we were rehearsing it like 5 times a day because we'd never used this technology before.
Right.
Like not on like not in a personal way, not, even in an internal like festival way. Now we were using it for, like, as Bern said, like hundreds of participants, and we're like, so we did like 5 like rehearsals a day, like.
Yeah. And we basically turned into a TV studio, like a decentralized TV studio, so that we could show our movies on Super Channel, which worked out because to watch the movies the movies are behind a paid subscriber wall, sorry.
Right.
And then everything else, like, we didn't have to drop one portion of the festival, and we did everything online. So we did that last year as well, and this year, but evolving a little bit, especially keeping in mind that people, like all of us, we're all just getting sick of Zoom meetings and, just interacting with people like this. So we had a great opening night and closing night party for the very first year of the virtual, but this year we didn't do an opening night party. Instead, we did like a smaller networking event, just, during the day. And, there are slight evolutions to it, even though we're still in virtual land, but hopefully next year it's hybrid, because we miss being in person and seeing people, and that's the real magic of it. But not worth letting people get sick, that's for sure.
Well, that's a fact. But at the same time, being in sort of this virtual space really allows you, like you said, to sort of get these films quite literally all across the country. And as I went through the lineup, I'm like, this is a murderer's row of all-stars you guys have sort of found to put together. Like, can you guys walk me through, I guess, at least from my perspective, from a Canadian standpoint, like, this is an embarrassment of riches when it comes to programming. I think you guys have really done a great job. Like, walk me through just sort of, I guess, whittling down everything, because especially these days, it really feels like the breadth of sort of really distinct and diverse Canadian cinema just keeps expanding and expanding by the day.
Well, because Ashleigh stole my job, I'm gonna let her answer that one, because that's now really all her. Go ahead, job stealer.
When I became festival director, we hired a programming team. We saw the festival growing after our virtual edition, and to the point of now we had a platform across Canada. We hired a team to help us with all of our submissions, because year after year, the submissions from Canadian creators increases. Every year we get more and more film submissions, and the amount of Canadian content, because we only screen Canadian content, the amount of content created every year is it's so impressive. Our team, though, we start looking at films like as soon as submissions open, and we sit with the films for 4 or 5 months, and we have many conversations and deliberations about how we're going to program it. And it really is like an organic process of what we respond to as individuals. We all come from diverse backgrounds within the industry, but then also what fits like the Canadian Film Fest mandate, which is broad, but still, we want to program films that appeal to wide Canadian audiences. And we also want to surprise and delight audiences who might not typically go to a film festival to see content, who are Super Channel subscribers, who turn it on. But we're really looking for those like bold Canadian voices and, distinct points of view. And I think, as you said, like every year the programming gets stronger, and it's so impressive. And it's so hard to just choose what we have the capacity to program. Like, there's so many films that we love that we have to leave on the table and walk away from. And we wish we could program more, and maybe in the future the festival will continue to grow where we have more spaces, but it's hard. It's not easy, but I think that speaks to like the incredible talent we have in this country.
No, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And I mean, at least for me, as sort of a viewer perspective, I've got to imagine that for some of these filmmakers to sort of have their film on a national network, as it were, is such a fantastic piece of exposure, even if and I mean, I'll reference something like A Small Fortune, which I know is playing in a couple of screens on the East Coast. At least it's getting sort of more of an audience all around the country now. How do you guys navigate sort of the complexities of dealing with rights holders and dealing with people who want to have a premiere on a screen, but also are sort of torn between sort of the realities of, if you put it on television, a lot more people are going to see it right now?
Great question. And I think that is, as filmmakers, we totally understand the desire to want to see your film on the big screen. And we, as Bern said, we were going to do a hybrid. Unfortunately, we couldn't this year, but in this situation, Super Channel has an incredible subscriber base across the country. And I think ultimately filmmakers want their films to find audiences. So to know that their films are being programmed and, the entire Super Channel subscriber base has access to their content is great. And anecdotally, we've heard, filmmakers from the East Coast find fans from the West Coast, and new audiences come to the festival and then come back last year, and hopefully they're back this year. This is a new way of exhibiting films, but the results are that we've engaged like a huge audience base for the filmmakers, which is phenomenal. And the films aren't screened as if they are on TV. Super Channel has been so understanding and supportive of trying to recreate the festival experience, but in a virtual space. So every film is screened once, and that's it. So Super Channel doesn't hold on to the films and repeat broadcast them. It's one screening as if it were a real in-person festival. So audiences have to catch the films when they're screening, or you have to wait until they're released widely in Canada.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I mean, it really does allow to try to, like you said, to try to recreate that experience as best you can. And I mean, as I go through your lineup, and I mean, I'll reference something that's playing tonight, Sean's film, just The Long Rider. And I mean, yeah. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic, but it doesn't necessarily fit what maybe audiences view as a quote unquote Canadian film. And I'm kind of curious for you both, how has the definition of what it means to be a Canadian film has evolved over the years?
When I started the festival a long time ago, that was a question that was a thing that annoyed me, because I remember one time walking into this video store. Remember video stores? And there was a really bad like a some B movie playing up on their screens, and one of the people who worked there was like, "Oh, what movie is that? It looks Canadian," like that. And it wasn't. It was an American movie, but it was a shitty thing to say. It's like, what's the last time you saw a Canadian movie? I mean, right? But that's why I started the festival, because I couldn't find any Canadian movies being played, and I really like it when the money's colorful, or there's no garbage on the streets, and it's like, oh, I recognize that street. Like watching Turning Red, for example, was mind blowing how there were as many Canadian flags as there were American flags in a normal Hollywood movie. And to me, I connect more to that story, to the people. The connection is much more real for me right away if it's in Canada. And that's one reason I started. I picked up ginger snaps one time in the video store. This is right before the festival started. And I remember watching it, just wanting a cheesy monster movie, but it was so much more than that. It was so good.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I would have paid money to see that in the theater. And that was one of the main things that pushed me into starting festival. That and my complete lack of how much work goes into doing a festival that helped me start it. but then especially at the beginning, every year, it was so funny. Every year for 5 years, not a filmmaker, general public person who told me that they got dragged in by a friend to see the movie, and then they stopped me after the movie, and like I thought, Canadian movies were this, but that was amazing. That was such a good movie. Like, where else can I see it? I'm like, nowhere yet, but we're starting to change that. And I think in the same way, people's perceptions of what is a Canadian movie, that's changing as well, because I find that the younger filmmakers especially don't know that Canadian movies are like supposed to be bad, like
right.
we grew up with, like when we were kids, and you see that kind of mentality all over. Look at the Canadian men's soccer team. They didn't know they were supposed to suck. Now they're going to the World Cup. And to me, it's that same kind of thing. So it's evolving in a good way, I think.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, go ahead, Ashleigh, please.
Oh no, I think if you look at the diversity of stories in our lineup too, I mean, there are a lot of like voices in Canada, a lot of perspectives, strong perspectives, a lot of stories and subject matter that filmmakers want to explore. So to Bern's point, these filmmakers challenge our perceptions of what Canadian stories are and what they can be, and what Canadian identity is. And I think that's just reflected in the diversity of like the content that's submitted and created every year.
What? Sorry, David, and that is very important what Ashleigh just said too, because we always felt like that Canada doesn't have a voice. It's got many voices, and to me, that's one of my favorite parts about Canada, because there are so many more stories when you live in a place like that. There's so many more stories, and they're all human stories, so you can connect with whatever. And it just, at the end of the day, makes a lineup more interesting because you've got all these different stories.
But I mean, you know what? I mean, I think it also speaks to just sort of the level of craftsmanship that comes out of the Canadian film industry as well, because I mean, in many ways, you could almost make an argument that something like Nightmare Alley is a Canadian film. I mean, it was shot in Oshawa, and it's filled with Canadian craftspeople and people working on it. And I mean, the thing that audiences tend to forget is that so many of the people who are working in support roles on some of the bigger shoots that maybe we have in Ontario or Vancouver or Montreal end up making their own movies, which end up playing in festivals like this one.
Exactly.
Guillermo del Toro said Shape of Water was a Canadian movie with a Mexican director. I remember he said that in an interview. I'm like, oh, thanks, man. That's cool.
Now, I mean, going forward, I mean, for you both, how do you think the idea of a festival evolves? Because, I mean, given the way the nature of the business is now and just the speed at which content is being released, there isn't necessarily that big festival window like there used to be. How do you think festivals, not just you guys, but I mean, in general, will be able to evolve and really stay relevant in many ways? I mean, I think they're relevant, but I can see a lot of other places who maybe not have access to content like you guys would sort of fall by the wayside if they can't sort of evolve and learn how to program or that kind of thing. How do you guys try to sort of stay ahead of that curve?
That's a good question. I think I had a great conversation with Andrea Grau, who heads up Touchwood PR years ago.
Friend of the show, love Andrea.
Right? She's just the best. And I was talking about what the festival is, but I'm like, yeah, but it has changed since the first year. And she said, Bern, TIFF wasn't TIFF the first year. Just have to be okay with the change and just be open to it, and then you'll stay relevant for forever if you can do that properly. So that's just kind of relaxed me. I'm like, okay, well, what's different this year? What do we have to do? Right? Like Ashleigh, for example, did a number of initiatives, which I'll let her talk about because they're hers, but a number of initiatives this year, even last year, but to focus on women or BIPOC filmmakers, to help diversify our lineup by diversifying even submissions and opening up doors. And sorry, Ash, this is yours, but they're amazing. initiatives.
Well, I also think, I think film festivals still play a crucial role in, one is exhibiting Canadian content, but also connecting films in early stages with audiences. For Canadian films that are looking for the theatrical or looking for the wider release, festivals are still a great way to put your films out in front of audiences, to be critically engaged with in reviews, with the media. That's such an important part of Canadian art, is having, the critiques of the films, but also developing an audience base, developing that word of mouth, setting up the platform for a wider release, or, finding distributors to put that content out there to Canadian audiences. I think festivals will always have a place in the film landscape in Canada and the world. It's, a curated space for people to engage with art, and as well as, showcase and elevate filmmakers who, who might historically, or who are emerging in the industry, or, taking their space in this industry as well. So for us, we have to innovate in this space because we're a small festival. We don't, have, we don't have a huge amount of resources. So for us, it's how do we keep putting Canadian content in front of Canadian audiences and elevating Canadian filmmakers. And that's, as Bern said, we had to pivot into this virtual space. We're looking at hybrid models moving forward. But I think as a festival, we'll always kind of live in this hybrid space now. It's too good to say we've partnered with Super Channel and we have a Canada-wide audience than to take that away from the festival. It's too good for our filmmakers. It's too good for Canadian audiences. So I think we'll be staying in that space moving forward.
Well, no, and I mean, I agree with you because obviously, given what the world has gone through and is still going through with the pandemic, there's always been this, quote unquote push to, we've got to get back to normal, but we don't have to build the old mousetrap again. Let's build a new one and try to build a better one. And that's kind of the idea, isn't it? Especially when when you're doing something that's showcasing art and artists out there for audiences to see. And I think that's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I agree with that. I don't know what's normal anymore. So, it's looking at what's going on in the world and what's relevant, and, the best way to navigate this space and still fulfill all of our mandates as a festival and what we attempt to do for Canadian filmmakers every year. And that's changing and evolving. And we have to be okay with that because that's what the world's telling us.
Just to follow up on that, I guess for you, is this possibly, from your standpoint, to sort of step into Bern's shoes and to steal his job, as it were, would this have been the best time for you to sort of jump into this role because the rules kind of got thrown out the window rather than sort of working with sort of a set structure of, this is how we did it last year, we better do it sort of similar this year?
Yeah, I think as soon as we had to pivot, as soon as we had to make the festival a virtual experience, it was kind of all hands on deck. And everything Bern and I knew to be true about the Canadian Film Fest was no longer as it was. So for me, yes, it's, we're playing in a new space. We've had to innovate in this space. It's made us kind of refine and, really hone in on what our mandate is and how we're going to deliver that every year. So, with all of the challenges of assuming a new role and working in a new space, it's actually been kind of great because, as Bern has said before, we get to make it up now. We've been able to make this up as we're doing it. There was no playbook. There was no this is how, someone else did it before us. So it was ours to shape and make. And I'm proud of the work that we've been able to do in the past 2 years.
Now, I mean, just to start putting a bow on this, I'm kind of curious because, I mean, obviously, as you mentioned before, Bern, we all miss audiences. We all, like, film festivals are built on interacting with other people and filmmakers and audiences. I'm kind of curious for both of you, who are obviously both so passionate about the work and getting Canadian films and artistry out there, where in these virtual times does sort of the emotional payoff come for you both? Because, I mean, again, without the crowds, without sort of the crowd reaction, as it were, it's hard to gauge. I can imagine, are we doing it right? Are we doing it wrong? How do you guys, like, where does the ultimate, okay, this is working moment come for you?
I think it's when you realize you can do the whole festival in pajama pants and a blazer. Because to me, nothing gets me happier than that. I mean, I wouldn't stand up right now. Let me put it that way. Nobody
Nor
needs
would
to see
I.
that.
So just, yeah.
But, right. But you know what? And that kind of sums it up. Like, fuck, it is what it is. What are you going to do? It's always either bankruptcy or change. Right. And that's like even a basic tenet of story making is stasis equals death. If you don't change in a movie, let's say, you're going to die, whatever death in that story means. Right. Shaun of the Dead. Shaun had to change or he was going to become a zombie.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So it's like that's kind of what we had to deal with. So where do we get the happiness from? Well, it still exists. And it exists in a way. Here's what COVID, I think, did help us with in this context, is that then we had to pivot, but we were already using many forms of that social media anyways, right? But now, because everyone literally in the world had to, the people who are in charge of the money, who usually tend to, and I will do a gross generalization here, who tend to work in corporate structures where they're taught that this is how this works, and they don't change at all. But now they had to accept that this is how it's happening. And then after it's all done, we show them the numbers, and they're better than anything, numbers speak, number-wise, better than anything we could have done in real life. So they're like, oh, okay, we are reaching a lot more people. This part of this works. So that forced those people, like the office people, to know that these models work. Okay, like working from home, for example, there are so many companies I know of, and Super Channel is one of them actually, that are going forward with like a hybrid work from home, work at the office structure, because the employees like it more. Everything gets done on time. I remember working for a big cable company, Rogers, and I was homesick for a week, but I could work from home and I could get my job done faster because for some reason the connection was faster. And then I asked my boss, I'm like, can I just work from home when I have to do these projects? I can get it done 3 times faster. And he said, no, you have to come in. I said, but I'll get it done faster and it'll be better for the company. He's like, no, you come in. Said, all right. So now we're able to at least, branch out. Well, again, we still want to be hybrid and in person, but the world has shown that these models can work. And for the people with the money who can sign off on money, that helps us make them realize.
And two, we're hearing, even though we don't get the satisfaction of standing before the crowd and hearing the applause and the feeling the energy of this space, the charged energy, we don't get that and we miss that, but we're still hearing from people. We hear from people on social media. I get, emails every day from people who've discovered the festival, who are not only watching on Super Channel, they're going to our social media channels, engaging with the interactive content, attending the industry series. So we're still engaging our audience and we're still finding people and we're still reaching new people, which I think is, that's the ultimate satisfaction for me, is knowing that this content is resonating with audiences. And hopefully next year we'll be able to do it in person as well as online again, or on Super Channel. But I'd still say we're still making those connections, which is the point.
Well, and no, you're right. That is the point, because at the end of the day, it's about getting the content out there and getting people engaged and getting people talking. And I mean, I think what you guys have done here is really a fantastic thing, because I mean, just you've got a broad swath of not just industry programming, but legitimate filmmaking programming that is quite literally from coast to coast. And I mean, I think this is such a well-programmed festival and really diverse, and it really showcases what Canadian film is. And I mean, I think you guys have done a fantastic job. And I mean, I think this is a real sort of example of how festivals and how programming needs to go forward. I mean, it feels like to me, programming is going to be such a vital importance to survival, not just for festivals, but for rep houses and for screens and everything, just to sort of stay alive and stay relevant. It really feels like people need to start being more active with programming. I mean, as much as I love, our friends at Cineplex, I would not want to be programming there right now. It's sort of a different experience entirely.
And can I say, Dave, too, thanks for all that about the programming and that. Tell you that's 95% all Ashleigh, and Jen Pogue helped with the industry series. They run stuff by me, but that's all their credit. Ashleigh is in charge of all of that.
Okay, I'll take that. Thank you.
I hate saying nice things about you when you're around. It doesn't feel natural, but it's the truth.
Well, Bern, you had to delegate. You gave someone else the job, so now you got to give the props. The props are due.
It's weird, you know what? Because some of Ashleigh and I, we had so much fun when it was just us two doing the programming. Yeah. We would each watch all the movies. Like every single movie gets watched at least twice back then. Now every single submission gets watched at least three. If it's 3 or 4 times, every single movie gets watched and rated. But when it was just Ashleigh and I, we would watch movies. Then we put together our dream program, and then we would sit down at a dinner and eat and drink too much and hash out the program, and it was so much fun. But yeah, I've kind of delegated, because I said, Ashleigh, if you take care of this stuff, I can just start looking for money, and I'm always there to help with the direction of the festival and all that, but I need to concentrate on this, because some of our budgets, what did I pay you the first year you worked as a program? I think I paid you like $200.
Yeah, tax year.
So we had no money.
Cocktails. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of drinks. So yeah, I've delegated a lot of stuff because Ashleigh and I both want to grow this festival, but and
we see a need for the festival in Canada, and we hear that from our filmmakers. We hear it from distributors. We hear it from producers, that in audiences there's a need for this content. So we're trying to survive.
And you guys are absolutely right. I mean, being on the other side, I know the need to expand, and I mean, I'm struggling through those issues too. And I mean, it's one of those things where I love that it feels like this business is in a spot where we can all really lift each other up going forward. And I think that's going to be a fantastic thing. And I just want to thank you both for the time today, and just again, congrats again on the fest and the rest of the fest. And you've done a great job. Seriously, I can't wait for future installments.
Thank you. It's so great to hear.
All right, really bye, great. Guys.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Cheers.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.